Hello and welcome to Sounds Heal Podcast. I am your host, Natalie Brown, and thank you so much for joining me as we continue to explore the fields of sound healing, sound therapy, and generally the use of sound for health and wellness. As we approach the 7-year anniversary of this podcast, I want to thank you so much for listening and supporting through the years. Today, I am thrilled to be joined by a truly remarkable panel. Lana Ryder, a sound therapy educator and mentor with decades of experience guiding practitioners. Rian McGonigal, a pioneer in therapeutic sound, blending instruments from classical guitar to gongs and didgeridoo. And Goodhart, world music composer, shamanic sound healing practitioner, and innovator across a wide range of instruments and traditions. In this conversation, we're diving into the heart of sound healing, how to honor ancient traditions while making the practice your own, balancing structured systems with intuition, and navigating the vast array of information and approaches out there. We'll also explore what meaningful training looks like and where the biggest opportunities and challenges lie for sound healing in the years ahead. So tune in for insights, stories, and guidance from 3 of the most experienced practitioners and teachers in the world of sound healing. Please welcome in Lana, Rian, and Rich. It's great to have you here. I'm really excited for our discussion and wherever it leads us. First, Lana, I'm going to start with you with a question. You have emphasized that sound healing isn't just a one-size-fits-all approach and caution against rigid associations between notes, frequencies, and chakras. How do you think practitioners can strike a balance between using structured systems and trusting their own intuition when working with sound?
Honestly, for me, that's a whole class. But what I like to tell my students is that, they will see these formats and certain protocols and certain teachings that will say you use the 12-note Western scale, the C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, starting with the lower chakras with the note of C, and so on and so forth. And I will tell them, you can use that to start. I'm not going to tell you that's wrong, okay? It's a good place to start. And in my experience, and to me, that's probably the most important teacher, is our experience. And the more you have, I think, the more you know. And usually the better you are at trying to figure out, what works for me, what works for this client, what works in this situation, individual or group sessions, whatever. So I tell them to go ahead and use that. In fact, when I first started teaching, I wrongly taught that exact thing. And then I realized that as I got with some more knowledgeable and wise teachers, and we all know who some of them are anyways, and Rich being one of them. So I realized that this doesn't work for everybody. How can we say that one note works equally well for almost 8 billion people on the planet? There are too many variables, okay? So what I learned was I would use different notes or frequencies for different clients. And I also, as a side note, I also studied this modality called voice bioanalysis, and with Dr. Kay Thompson Liu, and her notes were totally different than, like the note of E in the Western note scale was for the brain. Well, if you go by the other system, E would be for the third chakra. And, anyway, so, and yet they both worked, or sometimes they didn't work. So through the years, as I've used a lot of different notes, frequencies, instruments, I've seen that you can use your intuition, absolutely, but again, that depends on the person as to how well their intuition is honed, what experience they have with it, how advanced they are in using their intuition. And of course, the more we use it, the better we get at it. So that's what I teach. Okay, use this as a paint by number. You're not an artist yet, so use the paint by number and then start experimenting and seeing, which note, okay, that didn't quite work. They didn't, they didn't see any, they didn't feel what they wanted to feel, or they didn't reach their intention for the session. So let's try a different note. Let's try a different instrument. And so as I've gained more and more experience, I've seen that's the most important thing, to not, there's so many scales in the world, first of all, and so many notes. When you get into like, equal temperament and just intonation, you're going to see that there's so many notes that we don't hear when we're just using the Western scale. So that would be my answer: to experiment, use that as a place to start the basic, Western scale, and then uh, take it from there. Don't be afraid to experiment. And, so that's all I'll say about that for now.
Right, right. Yeah, I think that that's a great suggestion for beginners. It's a place to start.
Mm-hmm.
But, protocols, they're fixed, they're rigid, they don't necessarily work for everyone. And that's when you do start making it more individualized and personalized. You
Yes.
just, well, how does it make me feel? Yeah, okay. Well, Ryan or Rich, would you like to contribute or have input on that as far as the use of frequencies and the associations with notes versus
I'll offer a couple of
intuition?
thoughts.
Yeah, Rich.
There's a couple of things that she said that brought up for me. Um, this Lana was talking about all the notes and frequencies. With bowls like the metal bowl behind you, there's the primary note, but the overtones are not even harmonic. So if you're using these things, a lot of or gongs, for instance, there's an awful lot of tones that have nothing to do with scales and harmonics. Oh, the initial question of structured systems or intuition,
Yeah.
and there's a third element that I think is not talked about too often, and that's just direct perception and cultivating that, something to cultivate in your practice over time. I mean, if say you had a heart issue, or you wanted me to tone to your heart or sound and do some sound medicine for your heart, there'd be the one approach of chakra tones and protocols, which I don't use, and then the intuition. You could say, well, I'm going to do it intuitively, but I think this is not intuition. It's the ability to get out of your own way, to not have thought, to not go into your mind. Intuition is still self-referential. It's still me doing something. But beyond that is being able to just get into clear perception and tune into your heart center and see what that's telling me. And that's not my intuition, I don't think. I think it's a different level of perception. And then letting that kind of perception then indicate what to play, what sounds, what notes. If I'm using my voice in particular, it's the most immediate feedback loop is to have that perception direct my voice, but it can also go into the instruments as well, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, it does. It does. Ryan, do you want to add to that, or do you want me to move to the
Yeah,
next
I can
question?
add because the whole thing started with me. It came upon me like a wave. I had no intention to be in the healing arts. I was pursuing a classical guitar career in Philadelphia, and I had gotten management, and was doing concert tours around the tri-state area at different colleges and everything. But slowly filtering in, my manager was getting responses from the people that were communicating with him that they were getting stories of symptom relief during the concert. So it was beyond like an aesthetic appreciation. People's headaches were going away, sinus was clearing up, just little symptom relief. And we thought, let's keep an eye on this. And then I was playing in a little French restaurant outside of Philadelphia. I did it every Friday night. Little girl got up to dance. I played the whole Bach First Cello Suite as one of my sets. And a little girl got up to dance, and it just charmed everybody. She choreographed differently for every movement. And her waiter came up to me, asked afterwards, they were friends. He was friends with the family. He said, you don't know what happened, but that was a minor miracle because that little girl's deaf. So it blew me away. I was on break in the kitchen. I can still remember right now standing there thinking, how do I respond to this? What is this? And then with the coming of the symptom relief from my concerts, it all started to put me in the direction of music therapy as therapy. And so I kind of went on that course, and to get people involved, I couldn't teach in classical guitar. It took too long. So I started learning what I needed to learn to do public drum workshops. And they became very successful in Los Angeles. And this was back in the 90s, late 80s. Same thing, symptom relief. I wasn't working with chakras. I wasn't working with any system at the time, you know. It was happening, and people were telling me. So I would do a presentation in sound therapy. All of a sudden, I started adding from the drums, crystal bowls, Himalayan bowls, didgeridoo. One by one, I added everything. I was continually getting good results with everything, no matter what I did, no matter what notes I played. And so at that time, nobody was really, Steve, who was that guy that did the chakra suite?
Oh, Halpern, right?
Yeah, Steve Halpern.
Yeah.
That's when I understand, and Rich and I remember having a conversation. The whole chakra system, which was borrowed by the Theosophists from, you know, the West here, they borrowed that system so that they could amplify it and teach something to their philosophy. So they kind of borrowed the chakra system, the 7 chakra system. And if we look back into the Vedas and the texts, there are many chakra systems. So it's like, which one was chosen? And you mentioned earlier, I have a chart. Oh, Lana did. I have a chart of 5 different systems with 5 different vowel sounds for the chakras. I have color systems with colors for the chakras that differ from one another. So I think what's happening is we're in this kind of sound revolution. All of a sudden, sound itself has become this vital force all over the planet. I've watched it grow since the late 70s. We're yearning for a system people can latch on, and they can latch on with numbers because they understand numbers. Most of the people getting into it are not musicians, so they have not developed the left brain connection with music that all of us have. In a way, they haven't learned an instrument, and so therefore, so numbers, I think, are their way in. It gives people, oh, 432, now I can say something about it. I don't really even know what that means, but I can say something about it and be part of the conversation. So I think what these numbers and all the fashion frequencies, I call them, are coming in, because there's always a new one. Every month there's a new one. So it's fun to watch people who are, I think, basically left-brained come into this whole sound revolution through numbers and systems and chakra sets and all that. Whereas a lot of us that have been in since the 70s and 80s, a system didn't happen to us. It happened by way of what we did. And so that is still my system. If people, I'm fluent enough to talk numbers and everything, and I just took I'll show you my whole collection of bowls over here, went through like 36 of them and found 6 and 7 frequencies in every bowl. So each of those bowls is filled now with papers listing all the frequencies. The reason I'm doing this is because I kind of got out of this field for a long time by burnout from overdoing it with the cancer patients and everything at one period of time. That's the way it feels to me. Now at 75, I'm coming back in. So it's kind of a whole new world. And I have to figure, how am I going to approach it when everybody's talking? I went to the hearing test the other day, and the guy giving me the test is saying, hey, what's this I'm hearing about this one frequency that, it's not 440, it's something else. What's that all about? So people are picking up on numbers when they can't do it through sound because they don't know sound enough yet, but they can get in by way of numbers. So I think systems are going to be required for everything that becomes really, really popular.
Mm-hmm.
So we got 1,000 of them out there starting now. So I think people get attracted to the one that's going to work for them. You find your tribe, you find your system, you find your teacher. And that's my response to the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Really well said. It's almost like we're trying to find a sound pill, this one frequency. And the louder you play that frequency, the more it will heal
Right.
you. Yeah.
Right.
And what I've kind of seen, I've kind of noticed it from maybe a marketing standpoint too, that they're just standardizing, this
Right.
is the scale that you work in when you buy a set of bowls, it's going to be these notes.
Yeah.
And for someone that's not a musician or just coming into it and you want all your instruments to work together, there is that aspect too, that it's really been standardized for selling and,
Absolutely.
mass usage. So yeah. Yeah.
I think we've all agreed in our chats, Rich and I and Lana, and we've been chatting for years, and it's all about marketing. And now business people can get into it that don't know a thing about music or sound, but they know it's a product. So they think, okay, how can I use my business acumen and create a new product? Well, you got a new frequency and a new claim. I mean, you got 20,000 frequencies to choose from, so that's a lot of products.
Right. Right. Well, thank you all for sharing on that. I know it's like Lana said, when I first asked the question, this could be a whole class just about
Right.
that particular question. Let's get into Ryan. I mean, we've actually referred to a couple things here about the roots of some of these things, but sound healing draws from ancient roots, but it's constantly evolving through modern science, through personal experience. How do you honor particular traditions while making the practice your own?
Well, I started as a classical guitarist, and so the tradition behind that is what got me started. If I never got these responses, so that got me started. I'm pretty much self-taught in a sense that I never went to college for music, and I always just kind of got in there and broke the doors down I needed to do to succeed in the way I wanted to. So, but the roots, when I started with these other things, I didn't look into the systems. When I got into the bowls, the crystal bowls, I found out, first of all, where they came from. And they come from the computer industry. So any talk about, there was a bowl in Atlantis and all those Lemuria and all that, bowls come from there. The ultra new age kind of thought. So, but they would consider that part of the anthology or the archaeology of sound. And I think we're in an interesting time now where I don't want to deny that ancient things have quality and have source, but I also think we need to recognize that what we're doing now with sound is brand new. And we're kind of creating our own methods and our own systems, and that's why I think everything's so crazy. Look what's being done with gongs. All these independent gong makers showing up. Now, all the big gongs that we all knew of are kind of passé because the newer instruments are bringing out new sounds, and that's being discovered now. So I'm saying, I know gongs are old, but now it's new technology with those.
Yeah.
And my wife and I taught yoga for 10 years back in Prescott. We made our living. We taught 25 classes a week. and for 10 years. So we added it up. It's like over 10,000 yoga classes. But I ended every one with a final relaxation, and I would do some chanting, some Sanskrit chanting or something like that to bring, the ancientness of the yogic system and the Nada yoga tradition. So I think that the ultimate systems are the vocal systems as far as sound healing. I think that was more direct. But I think all things, the sitar and the ancient Asian instruments, I think at one time there was much more of a devotional approach, and then it kind of lost, and now I think we're refining it again. So I think we go back to appreciating the systems as we're creating our own.
Right. Right. Yeah. And what you spoke of with the innovations of the gong craft, actually, really any of the common instruments, you look at tuning fork innovations. I mean, there's
Right.
all these things that are shifting, that the one that holds true is the voice. I mean,
Right.
That's the origin of much of this. And, Lana or Rich, are there aspects of traditional sound work you feel need to adapt or be protected as the field grows?
Well, there's, this question of ancient practices. I'm not sure that we know a whole lot. There's like what Ryan was referring to was mostly music, music performance, voice chanting, but you're chanting melodies and with rhythm and melody. And the classical Indian music and other classical traditions, devotional traditions, they're based on a devotion to a musical system and not just this use of sound, I don't want to say non-musical use of sound, but I think you know what I mean, non-devoted musicianship system use of sound. And just one example is there are people that teach ancient Tibetan, and I've seen it referred to as 2,000-year-old and 4,000-year-old Tibetan bowl sound healing.
Right.
And as far as anything that I know in terms of legitimate research, is there really wasn't any bowls in Tibet, or maybe a few, but they weren't made there. And there's no known Tibetan bowl healing system, except that dates back to the early part of the 21st century. It's about as old as it gets.
Yeah, I agree with what you said totally, and what you've both said so far about everything. I know we're all on the same page with that, but as far as protecting or adapting ancient, uh, to me, for me, the voice has been consistently the one thing that my clients, the attendees in the group sessions, people where I go out and speak, whether it's a cancer support group or dementia support group or, wellness days and corporate events, without fail, they say, everything was wonderful. I love this instrument or that instrument, but your voice is what really got me or what really moved me. And what I do with my voice is I get out of the way. I open my mouth, and whatever comes out is what is needed in the moment. And that seems to work well. And like Ryan had said, he was performing music and seeing these changes happen, this transformative power of the music or the sound or the voice. And I saw the same thing in music ministries. People would come up to me and they would say, well, the message today was really good, but when you sang, that moved me. And so I started looking at ways to use my voice in more healing ways. And then when I, like Ryan, sound just kind of fell on me. I was at a holistic wellness center associated with one of the local hospitals, and uh, um, yeah, Mitch Gaynor came and spoke to us for our opening of this center. And that's what set me on the path of, okay, I need to dig deeper. I need to see, why do certain notes, why do certain intervals, why do certain songs affect me differently than they do you or you know? And that eventually led me to studying with some better teachers too, instead of just the surface stuff, which was a good starting place. I'm not, putting them down. It was a good place to start. But yeah, Mitch Gaynor, when I saw his work and how it affected those people, the terminal cancer patients, and with my medical background also coming into play with this, I realized that, yeah, this is powerful. There's more here than we realize. And so how to preserve and adapt those things, again, like what Ryan said about, yeah, it's all new. What we're doing now is all new. And what Rich said about perception um, is so true as well, because we all perceive things differently. That's why we all have, our different favorite instruments and sounds and foods and so forth. So, um, yeah, to preserve that and yet work our way through all the newness of it, the new technology of it. I mean, sometimes I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, but I do it. But I do it and it works.
Mhm. Right, right. Yeah.
I've heard that a few times from people, healers. I came here and there was a guy here who was a very well-known holistic arts healer. He said exactly what Lana said. He said, a lot of times I'm faced with a patient, I know I don't know what to do, but yet something works. So I think, as we were saying before with Rich, with the intuition, we don't know what we're going to come up with that works. Dr. Simonton called me in once at the hospital, and he said, this guy has a terrible, chemotherapy, radiation headache. I went through cancer, so I know what they're talking about. So that's how I can relate so well with. And he said, what's your favorite music? He said, country music. I've been bringing in the didgeridoo and the crystal bowls and the Himalayan bowls and everything. And what are we going to do? Well, I had just learned a song by Patsy Cline, I Fall to Pieces. And in fact, I was working on lyricizing it because we were going to make a theme song for the cancer hospital I worked in. And that song was going to be sung by a tumor being affected by people's positive attitudes. I fall to pieces each time you smile at me again, or something like that. So the whole idea was that the way that idea came about, I fall to pieces, being sung by a tumor that's being destroyed by the benefits of holistic mental and emotional work on cancer patients other than medical. And then I sing the song to him. And when I'm finished, Simonson says to him, how's your headache? And he looked all confused. He had totally forgotten the headache. It went away right away when we started the interaction. So again, I was prepared to do something completely different. And like Lana said, I had to laugh. I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. But I think a lot of us are put in that position of relying on the fact that, wow, we're in a present moment situation now. And whatever we decide is going to have some kind of validity to it. So it's an interesting place to be.
Mm-hmm.
Which bowl am I going to choose? It was never a choice for me. In other words, I just grabbed one or two. That's why cancer patients have trouble getting to sleep. They're on chemotherapy, which is, it's poison in your system. You can't sleep, you can't relax, you can't de-stress, even if you want to. But I was able to get 10 cancer patients to go to sleep by putting them in a big circle on the floor and putting big Himalayan bowls between each one. So my right ear would be that person next to me's left ear. And so they were, they were in between their heads. So it was head, bowl, head, bowl, head, bowl, all around a big circle. And after 4 or 5 gongs, I told them, really listen as long as you can to the decay. So, and that gets people appreciating how things will continue to ring for a long time. And it makes them focus on that for like 20, 30 seconds at least. And during that time, there's just this, it's a focus, but it's also like things are decaying. To me, it was a metaphor for falling into sleep. And next thing I knew, they were all asleep.
Yeah.
So we just do what we can do. I'll tell another quick story. A woman came, I was pretty good at, I got a reputation in Los Angeles years ago, pain relief with the didgeridoo. So that was great. I could walk into a patient's room and you have pain somewhere, bah, just blow it right away. And it worked pretty much all the time. Simonton called me a little miracle worker, minor miracle worker. Anyway, and she had terrible pain in her right hand. I specifically worked on that in different ways. And then we like it when people fall asleep during the private sessions because it means everything's slowed down. We continue to work. I work with my wife too. And, we listen to their breathing and make sure they stay, but they're kind of on the edge. And so we put her through that. Then we ended the session and I said, how's your hand? And she said, well, it's a little better. The pain is still there. But the spirit of my father who died 20 years ago came to me. And during this half hour we worked out every problem I had with him from childhood. So it was this massive healing between daughter and father that had never happened when he was alive. So these are the kind of things that would happen to people like us. We never know what's going to happen. And so we kind of just stay open and available, and being in the moment is really what it's all about.
Absolutely. And embracing the mystery and grace in it all. Yeah.
I love that. Embrace the mystery. Yeah.
And I found that when I still will do sessions or events, and this voice will come up and say, you don't know what you're doing. What am I doing? I don't know. I'm faking it. But I get out of that, as soon as I start, I might have a thought, oh, I'll use this instrument, or that instrument may be appropriate next, or something. But that's all my mental thought. And as soon as I do the work, I drop into that place of clear perception. And it's almost without fail, what happens is not what I was thinking. The instruments that I choose, or, how it evolves, is almost never what the thought prior to it was.
I got to say, when I was getting into the didgeridoo, it was like something got kick-started in my sound work. So I started researching as much as I could. I bought a book about 2 inches thick. I think it was Robert Lawler. He's a sacred geometry guy, but I think he did a thing on the Australians. Anyway, it was a thick book. But Rich, when you said that, it was crazy because they said one of the prayers that the Aboriginal shaman or healing, whatever they called him down there, would say was, before he would do a healing session, he'd say, I hope I'm not telling a lie. And that just really hit me. I just really resonated with that too, because I think we're all going in on uncharted territory with this whole sonic, emotional healing thing that we're into.
Right.
And I find it's a whole different paradigm of operation, of mental, whatever. It's not the prescriptive thought, I have my chart, or I have my, things that I do from this Western analytical state of mind. There's this other paradigm of operation that is, it's different. It involves a different aspect of perception and response, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so we've kind of headed this direction. You've all been involved in the field for decades. You know, if we added up how many years between all of us, it would be many, many decades. And seeing this evolution firsthand. Rich, I'm going to send this to you first. From your perspective, where do you feel the field is right now as a practice, a movement, or even an industry? And what does that bring up for you?
That's another question that we could spend an hour talking about.
I know.
But I'll dispense with the third one first, industry. That I don't feel great about. I think, what has happened already to a huge extent is, this idea that, oh, hey, we can make money on this. We can, there's someone who has a workshop that promises 6-figure income,
Right.
even 7-figure. He says you can even make 7-figure income by following his guidelines, for sound healing. And once it becomes viewed from that perspective, I just think it all falls apart. Integrity goes out the window. There are compromises that are made by even some people that I consider to have high integrity 10, 20 years ago. I see them making compromises for the income. And so I'm not a fan of the industry. I don't think industrialization is the right word, but for it becoming this basically business first kind of model, I think destroys a lot. Then that gets into the whole thing of society and how do we operate, in capitalism is, and making money is the number one, above all, things that you have to satisfy. So what were the others as a movement and as a practice? I'm also, in terms of the movement, when something becomes with sort of the bandwagon that a lot of people are jumping onto, I tend to jump off. And I was a musician first, like Rian, for many years. And but I was also a Qigong practitioner, Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, shamanic practitioner, and eventually realized that these things were all interrelated, and that where my music was coming from was from this healing realm, or this energetic transformation kind of realm. And when I first found my first sound healing teacher, Sarah Benson Sarua, she was Jonathan Goldman's first teacher. And she's on some of his recordings and taught at his big retreats. And I met her here on the East Coast. And it was a classic case of when you're ready, the teacher appears. She saw me offering some sound rhythm drumming at a retreat week, at a Sufi retreat, actually. And she came to me and said, basically told me that I was ready to study with her. So she became my first sound healing teacher that I worked with for 10 years, the last 10 years of her life, basically. And but she lived about 2 hours from me, and when I was on the phone with her getting directions and for a weekend workshop, at some point I asked, well, what should I bring? She said, oh, no, you don't need to bring anything. And I said, well, what do you mean? This is sound healing. I've got instruments. I play a bunch of different instruments, hand drums and etc. Oh, no, this is all about your voice. And I said, my voice? I don't use my voice. Kind of ironic right now, as my voice is kind of really blocked up. But actually, I've been dealing little side note, I've been dealing with this issue for quite some time, actually. This year, I had Lyme disease pretty badly last year. I was on antibiotics multiple times. And I've had this response in my voice since then. But when I've done events, I did one in September. Did one at the Omega Institute in August. These sound healing events with 40, 50 people. And when I do them, my voice comes out. I don't have this problem. When I'm speaking, yeah. But if I were to get some instruments and do a sounding, my voice would come out. So I don't know what that's about, but it's something for me to work on. But she said, I said, oh, I don't use my voice. And she says, oh, honey, you will. And all the work, most of the work, the practices with her was through our voices. Although she played instruments, she had bowls and flute and drum, and she used them as well in support of the voice, or as a contrast to voice work. But all of that was as a musician and intuitive in terms of your perception using the instruments. She didn't teach us how to use instruments in sound healing. It was all just a kind of a given that you'll know how to use it when you work on yourself through your voice, through meditation, through Qigong, through sitting out in nature, finding a place in nature that you can return to often and just sit and listen to the seasons change, listen to the birds at different times of the year, listen to the wind, all of these contemplative things where you get out of your head and tune in and tune up your nervous system, and then working with your voice through sound and sound healing and perception. Again, she never taught methodology in terms of the instruments, in terms of pitches or scales, and we might work with a scale vocally just to chant in sound using a scale, but it wasn't prescribed, with any particular pitches for any particular, parts of the body or anything. So practice, I appreciate the movement, that it's become this movement, but it's also become incredibly diverse, splintering off in countless different ways, some of which I think are really good. Some teachers I think are really good. They seem to get it. Others offer certifications in it after a weekend course. Some of them seem to just focus on methodology, this note, frequencies, notes, instruments for chakras, instruments for different parts of the body. And I think we all here are not fans of those kind of prescriptive approaches. So, yeah, I think it's hard to say in terms of what's happening with the practices, because I think it's splintered and going in all sorts of directions. Again, some I think get it and are more beneficial than others.
Yeah. And I really like your points, a lot to do with your foundations and your teacher, and how that really foundational level was more about nature and about the voice and about these teachers that are nature and deep listening and things like that. And you did bring it into this aspect of how sound healing is being taught. So maybe I'll kind of go into that next. Lana, I'll send this to you first. As it's becoming more widely taught, right, we see all kinds of classes and certifications popping up. And I see actually all these Facebook groups that we're in, and we see things about, do I need to be trained, or what's your what training should I take, right? There's so much out there. How do you think we can balance formal training with self-guided learning and lived experience? And what makes a sound healing program or certification truly meaningful? People getting to this, how can they discern what's even right for them? What do you think, Lana?
Well, one of the things I tell people when they come to me and say, I'm interested in attending your sound school, but I've looked at this one and that person and this person, and I say, look at their lineage. Who did they study with? What kind of training do they have? How long have they been practicing? Ask them, how many sessions have you given? What is your experience? Um, and I think that's a good place to start. Um, I think we need good educators. Like Rich said, there are some out there. I see it. And I recommend most of the teachers that I've learned from. um, and I think that we need, when I see some of these groups and people saying, "Oh, I bought a set of bowls and I'm going to give my first session tomorrow," I go, "Ah, okay. Well, hopefully they'll represent all of us well." Some people have that musicality and they have a feel for it and they'll do okay. But I'm so thankful. I'm so grateful. And I owe a lot of my success as a teacher and a practitioner to these good teachers. Um, I have a music background. I've been a professional vocalist. Well, still am. I just use it in different ways. And I come from a long line of musicians. So yeah, it's in my blood. Okay. And I think I have a question, a list of questions. I'll tell, people who are inquiring, I'll say, you know, ask them, what do they teach? Because if it's just here, buy these bowls and do strike it and rim it and, that's it. That's not enough. One of my teachers, Alexandre Tanu, he's one of the first ones, and he and Mitchner set me straight on some things I had learned, misinformation. Good teachers, just, they didn't know. They were parroting what they had been taught. And so I learned that, now I forget where I was going with that. What did Alexandre say? Yeah. One of the things he did say was a virtuous practitioner can give an effective session with just one gong or just one bowl
Right.
or just their voice. And when I first heard that, I immediately went, oh, but I always take like 20 instruments with me, or, and then what would I do without all of them? And it challenged me to go, okay, what does this mean? And I share that story with the prospective students as well, um, because when you are really confident, I think you have to have enough training and experience, and then, like we've all mentioned, you go into a situation and you go, I thought I would use this, but there the instrument sat all night. I didn't do a thing with it. And I used this, which I sort of just grabbed at the last minute, and that was what was most effective. And so I just encourage people to really research. And another thing is, you get what you pay for. You want to take, a weekend class for $98, and it's online, and you can learn some things online, but I always say there are some things you can't learn online. And one of the best things about going to training in person is the interaction. It's the community. It's the things you learn from one another. It's the things that you get one-on-one mentorship, where somebody's not just watching you on a screen, but you have that interaction. One of the things, and I have these, I use these testimonies all the time. Students will say, like in our graduation circle, is I came to learn about sound, but I learned so much more, because the spiritual aspect of it is really important. It's like Rich referred to, if you're just doing it for the money or it's the latest trend, yeah, you know, that's on you, okay? But I think most of us who are serious about this and have been doing it for a long time, we've had our own learning curves. And so we have learned that this isn't about me. This isn't about how can I make this sound, or how can I, really impress people so that they'll want me to come back. It's about something far greater. It's bigger than all of us. And I see sound, and I've told Rich, I said, don't stop teaching now. Of all the times, we need you. We need people like you. We need good teachers, people who really know. So when these people come to us, and they see that maybe we know what we're talking about, um, that they should listen. And I don't, when I hear people like Alexandre say, um, "Oh, I don't know very much," I go, "Oh no, if he
Yeah.
doesn't know very much, and you know who I'm talking about, and you know what
He knows a lot.
he,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, yes." And so those are the teachers I recommend, and Rich, and to get into some of the groups that offer a little more substantial, information. I'm meandering here, so did that answer the question?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Really, really well said, actually. Yeah. Ryan, any thoughts on trainings or certifications and kind of the state of all that right now?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because we're doing one in April, and my wife teaches soul coaching. She trains people to be soul coaches. So she's got her trainings, and I've got mine coming up. And with me, it was interesting. I felt like I was out in the middle of nowhere when all this started, because I had no one to relate to and no teachers. And so I pretty much had to become self-taught and learn everything on my own. And I learned harmonic singing by listening to a recording I had done of the Om. And I heard a harmonic there that I hadn't heard or wasn't aware of in the recording. And I thought, I'm doing it. I've heard about this. They said only Tibetan monks can do it, but I just did it. And this is back in the old days when there were still these stories that the bowls are 7 metals and Buddha had a bowl and things Rich was alluding to. But I think my classical guitar background came to play in, like, how can I make everything that I discover really musical and fit together? And my collection came upon me. I just counted my bowls. I got 36, but it's a 30-year collection. And I built my collection by people wanting to order something, and then I order it for them, and I get it, and I can't let it go. So I got to order another one now to give to the client that ordered them. So my collection just kind of built that way. I know a lot of people say, how do I build my collection, as a big part of what they're going to learn in a thing. And C, D, E, F, G bowls, very, very simple. But when you start working with the metal bowls, you have different frequencies. They have overtones a lot of times, not harmonics. And people need to learn from the beginning in how they're taught, like, what is the definition of that term? Because I see people throwing around, every harmonic is an overtone, but not every overtone is a harmonic. So if somebody didn't know what I was talking about, it'd be very obvious right away. So I would like to see people learn, like Lana said, somebody said, I just got 7 bowls. What do I do? I'm giving a sound concert Saturday night. So you want to get somebody like that and give them a foundation to where they feel confident that every decision they make is proven to be a good one way or the other, either sonically, theoretically in music theory, choose the right intervals, or, the right one from the heart. But I feel like it's hard these days because everybody's heard so much about different frequencies and they're kind of expecting that. So I break those things first, usually when people come in a gentle way. And, somebody came once and after a 10-minute conversation, she goes, well, I'm throwing away that sound machine I just ordered because she didn't feel like it had relevance compared to using her own voice for healing. So the voice work, that's the first thing I would have anybody do in cancer patients, was have them go through all 7 vowels and spend 15 minutes feeling what it feels like to use your voice for 15 minutes without singing a song. You're toning, you're using your voice for, the benefit of what the voice can do to your glandular system. And so the results of that can be felt in people's feeling of euphoria after singing or toning. The glands secrete hormones from the vibrations. So I always approached it in that way, more like down to earth, meat and bones of the body and what is sound doing on us, and let people come up with their own spiritual systems because everybody's going to be unique that way. But I can tell you that if you can secrete serotonin from 15 minutes of chanting Ah, which Ranjit Singh, a researcher in Canada, found about 30 years ago, that's how people can approach things. So I teach things people can really learn and are repeatable.
Yeah. 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 This has been our theme, I think, in our discussion. Just so to round out the last question, just looking ahead at the opportunity and challenges of this field in the coming years, and whoever wants to jump in first, how do you think we as a sound community can navigate these misconceptions, the trend of it all, skepticism, and while fostering a greater understanding, and I would say integrity, most importantly, in the field? Anybody want to jump in on that?
I think one of my favorite quotes is, to speak the truth in love, to lovingly let people know, to inform them, to if somebody says, "Oh, well, I got the 432 bowl, and now, do you think that's really the best?" And to educate them in that moment and say, "Well, this is how I feel, or this is what I know." And then you plant that seed rather than correcting them from a place of, well, I know more than you do type of thing, but gently and lovingly sharing from your heart the correct, or as far as we know, correct, because we don't know what we don't know. But as far as we know, sharing the correct information and planting that seed and hoping that they will take it further. It's important to have the facts, and there are certain laws. I mean, even in physics that apply, and some of those don't change. Science can change, but so just to keep sharing what we know. We need good educators, and we can do that in a way that builds community rather than add to the division that already exists in our world.
It's funny because when people are talking about I'm certified, and I'm thinking this is such a new field. Who certified the certifiers? Like nobody ever certified me, but I've taught thousands of people all about sound therapy. So it's kind of we're in a no man's land. We're creating it right now. And so hopefully the people that get started, and that's what I'm curious about, what are they teaching? What are you guys teaching if somebody comes to you and wants to learn all about frequencies in 432 and as if that's the way it's supposed to be, and then somebody else teaches it as if that's the Bible. That is the way. And if you don't realize that it's 440 is, not where it's happening, it's just too much variability. So who's going to set like Yoga Association came in, yoga got started, got really popular, and then there became a governing board. So, you had to have 200 hours, it had to have a certain amount of this and a certain amount of that. Pretty soon, we're on the road to a governing board being established for sound therapy. But it's such a diverse field now. It's grown branches out into the universe, basically, with methodologies and belief systems behind it. And where else can you go and just invest a few dollars and all of a sudden call yourself a holistic healer? You can't become a homeopathist, you can't become a chiropractor, you can't an herbalist or any of those things without years and years of study under supervisory boards. We don't really have one. They're starting to be established. I see you guys as one. I see Lana's got her thing. Rich has his programs. He's been out in Omega now for a long time, I have my approach to it. What I did was going to give people a basic understanding of the main things in drumming, crystal bowls, Himalayan bowls, workshops in each, applications of how to use them all. Didgeridoo, not a lot of people are using it. It was my most powerful instrument because I could go right in, talk about a heart chakra opening or whatever. Somebody says my solar plexus is stuck. I just blast their solar plexus with a didgeridoo. I've never failed, even if it's placebo effect. And that's what I think we should really be looking at, is that with all these things, you tell somebody 432 is where it's at. Well, it's placebo effect. They can say, yeah, I believe that. It's confirmation bias. So people are choosing what they want to believe according to what makes them feel good. Like I said, a left brain person will go with a left brain approach. Numbers, give me numbers. Right brain person's going to go with a feeling approach. Intuition, I can really feel that. So in my workshops, in the beginning ones anyway, I try and cover every gongs, every aspect of sound therapy in all possible instruments and make sure that they can go out and feel confident sharing that information. Then, people can go and study with whoever they want after that, according to what they want to confirm, how they like it. Somebody want to move into more voice work, somebody want to move into more didgeridoo, whatever, bowls. It's a choice, but I think the foundation, people should understand a lot of things. And I think people should understand a little bit about music, because to me, it seems ridiculous to see somebody come in and say, hey, I got this C bowl. Well, what bowl should I get next? I have no idea. So a little bit of music theory would help them make decisions and feel educated. Yep. Those are the things I think we all try and touch on in our own ways. And how is the field going to be protected from people coming in and saying 440 is an evil thing started by one of Hitler's generals? I mean, it's so far out in left field, but people believe it. Because I realize that personality type benefits from believing that. And I got that from Simonton. He would ask the cancer patients, do you want to live? And then, a lot of them couldn't answer because they were really, you think you take it for granted, but they had to confirm with it. And he's the one that started mind-body medicine with cancer patients. So, a lot of this is just what he found out is people want to do what they want to do. And if a person wants to believe in numbers, you're not going to change their mind. And 432 is their Bible. And if a person believes in feelings, that's their whole world. So you appeal to that too. So who knows where it's going to go? But with the millions of opportunities people have now, yeah, it's a big palette to choose from.
Yeah, it's rapidly changing too, I think, increasingly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Rich, do you want to comment on this last area here?
Sure. My paradox or my internal conflict is that on one hand, I feel like it's a lost cause. I feel there's so much nonsense out there and so much misinformation and disinformation. Some of it, I think, much of it is just from ignorance. Some of it is intentional. I look at what some things are being offered and I can't help but feel on a deep level that's an intentional disinformation in order to sell products or whatever their motivation is. So on one hand, I feel it's a lost cause. And I just want to be a musician again. I go back to being an artist. I mean, that's what I am first, a musician and an artist. And, but I can thank Lana for this, for nearly constantly reminding me and telling me that we need people like me who speak the truth
Yeah.
and who come from a place of integrity without a whole lot of concern for how much money I'm going to make off of it. So she reminds me of that all the time. And so I remember that part of me as well, that is in contrast to, I mean, maybe it's both things. Maybe it's a lost cause, but at the same time, within that lost cause, what am I going to do? What is my life going to be, day to day, moment to moment? And it's still about integrity in word and in deed. And I do have a lot to say, on a lot of this stuff. I have been involved for decades, and I have studied a lot, and I've gone through a lot of experience. So I can offer that. That's all I've got, is I can offer that. And whether it's a lost cause or not, or whether I reach a few people. Like I mentioned, I did an event at Omega in August and actually had roughly 70 people in the sanctuary at Omega. And when it was over, the amount of people that just sat there for 10, 15, 20 minutes afterwards, or that came up to me afterwards and said, I've been to many sound baths, but I've never experienced anything like what you just did. And they're just bowing to me and thanking me. I need that every now and then, to be reminded that, oh yeah, there is value to what you're doing.
That's right.
Regardless of what's going on in the world.
That's what it's all about. And what you said before and what Lana has said is that we do need people to gently speak up more often about all these things that we're talking about. That's why we're having this conversation, is so that it won't be a lost cause, is that we are creating this container where people can share and actually ask the questions, because there are some people that really do want to know. They're just, like you said, they're uninformed or ignorant at a certain stage that emerging practitioners aren't sure how to discern yet. So yeah, keep speaking up, keep offering from your heart. I mean, all of you, these messages. Yeah, from the foundation, from that first time you meet someone, that first class you teach, it's just in the language that we use to help them make their own judgments rather than just following a trend or the marketing and things like that. Yeah.
I think we're creating a legacy here too, because I look at my teachers and I'm very thankful, for those that I've had. And Rich really has, he's sometimes bluntly told me, well, no, that's not true. I say, okay, well, what is? And he tells me and he teaches me. And so therefore, through me, his legacy and his teachings, or from Sarah through Rich, through me, through the hundreds of people that I've taught, and so if we're bringing in, the new earth, this is all foundational. And like Ryan said, to teach the fundamentals, meet people where they are. And I mean, we added a class, music theory for non-musicians. And this, it's amazing how many people don't know very much about music. They know what they like, and so I just want to encourage anyone who's listening to get research and get some training. It is the best thing I ever did, even with my own vocal training and my musical background and experience, because I had done this for several years before I got some really good teachers and learned, what Ryan's talking about, what Rich is talking about, you, Natalie, and all these other people that we've mentioned. It's really important to build the foundation of sound right now. We have an opportunity to create a better foundation than, like Rich said, some of the stuff it's like, oh, I just give up. But don't, keep there, keep doing what we're doing, because it's bigger than us. It's bigger than us. It's a humanitarian thing to help make the world a better place. And that's my sermon.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to just add this idea of music and having some kind of musical training. That, from what I know about ancient practices, is again, was mentioned before. I think we spoke to this. Is musicianship. In ancient Greece, physicians were expected to play an instrument, to play a flute or a lyre or to sing. That was part of being a doctor or a physician, was your music. There's this figure in the middle there, kind of like a stick figure holding up with two hands. That's a prototype pictograph from, I forget, around maybe 1100 BC or something. I don't remember exactly, in China. And it's the symbol for medicine. And what it is, if you take these two little things off the top, I don't know if you can actually see it.
Yeah.
If you take those two little things off the top, it's the symbol for music. And those two little symbols on the top above his hands are herbs, are plant. So the prototype symbol in 500 to 1000 BC or so in China for medicine was a combination of music and plant, medicine.
Yeah.
So I'm all for learning music as part of having developing
That's right.
musical skill,
Yeah.
Right.
practiced sense of rhythm.
Yeah, and it's never ending too, right? We're all still learning all
Yeah.
these years later, and to encourage people to follow those rabbit holes, right? That's what this is all about. And once you find those things that excite you, keep going, keep learning, keep digging deeper, because that's where the real experience and teachings come from, right? Get one bowl, but go further than that. Keep going, keep learning and exploring, and getting feedback from people is also a wonderful way to learn every time you offer a session. Just like Rich was saying at the end of his event, how amazing that felt just to get that feedback. And
Well, just when we got to Prescott, we moved from Los Angeles so it was 97 and I started doing what became sound baths. There wasn't even a term in 97 for a sound bath. I don't know when that term started, but I just called them concert meditations because as people were coming in, I'd be playing Bach on the guitar and they would all get settled. And when they left, I would do the same. So it was kind of a concert in a way, but the 90 minutes in between was all sound work, going from didges to drums to bowls to everything. We had it all worked out in a system. But one thing we found, there was a woman in town who had also been doing it, and she had this policy of coming and going in silence. And we really liked that. So that, what people want to be that way. I mean, Rich mentioned that It's kind of like they got enough to want to be just feel complete sitting in silence. It's a feeling of completeness, like a human experience of this is enough right now and I don't need to move or go anywhere.
Yeah.
And we felt that all the conversation that would happen after a sound event, a deep sound meditation, would get splashed away with all small talk at the end. And everybody seemed to like the idea. So it got deeper and deeper as we went to come and go in silence. That became a policy. People loved it. And I think what we're trying to do, Rich's people, they weren't asked to do that, but he got them there into that place that they just want to experience themselves feeling full and rich because of what they've just experienced. They want to hold on to it.
Right. Allow them to carry it with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
We just had that, and the term that came to me was one from back in my churchianity days was holy hush.
Holy
Oh, nice.
And we just
Nice.
sat, Ken and my associate, we just stood there and we just left it. We just looked at each other and we just, however long it took, I wanted to wait and see till people started moving a little bit. And it was a while, but we just left it be. Yeah. Silence is an important sound.
Yeah. And sometimes people just want to stay there, have a slumber party. They don't want to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's always
Thank
a few
you.
that get up and run out really quickly. And I go, did I offend them?
Well, thank you all so much. Really, I appreciate this conversation and the direction that you all took it, and all the time and conversation we shared. I really appreciate it, and I hope it leaves the listeners with a lot to consider for themselves as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for putting it together because it's fun. Rich and Lana and I know for years have been communicating on Facebook, but it's so we kind of know each other in a way, but this is a way that we can all kind of convene and get different points of view. And we're kind of somewhat in the generation that came from old school where like classical guitar, Andres Segovia was the one. You have to spend a lifetime becoming a master.
That's right.
Now you do a sound master. I knew a guy did a weekend gong workshop and he became a sound master.
Gong master, yeah.
In a weekend. It's pretty good. But I also feel it's valid in a way because everything is speeding up so quickly. How long would it have taken us to send a letter to China and get a response?
Yeah.
Back in the day. Now it happens in a split second. So with information and everything coming in so soon, I can kind of understand people getting into things quicker because there's a mass of information that they have to absorb and then put back out into the world. It's just getting faster and faster. So there's a positive and a downside to all these too.
That's true.
But I think, like I said, what you guys are doing and organizations that are starting to kind of, put a fence around, here's how it happens. These are our limitations and these are the guidelines. And it's a great thing to see.
Yeah.
So thanks for putting it together. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Great to be with you. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sounds Heal Podcast. You can keep up to date with what's coming up next at soundshealstudio.com, on the YouTube channel, Sounds Heal Studio, for the podcast and new music, on Instagram at Natalie Brown Sounds Heal, and Facebook at Sounds Heal Studio. Be well and stay tuned.